The untold story of the first women in space. Imagine being told that your dreams are impossible, not because you lack the skill or the knowledge or the ambition, but simply because of who you are. For centuries, women were told exactly that their place was not in the laboratory, not at the drafting table, and certainly not in the stars. And yet, they went anyway. They looked up at the night sky, saw the same constellations as their male counterparts, and dared to ask, why not me? Today we're diving into the stories of those women, pioneers who defied expectations and rewrote history. This is the story of how women broke into science, engineering, and even space itself, despite a world that tried to keep them grounded. To really understand how groundbreaking these women were, we need to set the scene. For most of recorded history, education, especially in the sciences, was considered a male domain. Women were expected to focus on domestic roles, raising children, managing households, and supporting their husbands' careers. Even brilliant women like Hypatia of Alexandria, one of the earliest known female mathematicians and astronomers, faced violent backlash for stepping into male-dominated spaces. She lived in the 4th century and was ultimately murdered by a mob, not just for her intellect, but for daring to exist outside societal norms. Fast forward many centuries, and little had changed. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, universities routinely barred women from enrolling in scientific programs. Engineering was considered too physical, and mathematics too abstract for the so-called delicate female mind. Yet, despite these limitations, women found ways to contribute, often behind the scenes and without recognition. Some worked as computers, human calculators hired to process data for male scientists. Others contributed through unpaid or anonymous work, their names erased from history, but of the space race. That changed everything. A new frontier, but not for everyone. The mid-20th century brought with it a new obsession: the conquest of space. The Soviet Union and the United States were locked in a race to see who could reach the cosmos first. But at first glance, it seemed like women were still not invited to the launch pad. In both countries, space programs were highly selective, choosing the best test pilots, engineers, and scientists. And because of systemic barriers, most of those people were men, but not all. In the Soviet Union, a woman named Valentina Tereshkova caught the attention of the space program. She wasn't a military pilot, not officially, but she had over 120 parachute jumps under her belt, an essential skill for cosmonauts who had to eject from their spacecraft upon re-entry. She was tough, smart, and determined. And in 1963, she made history as the first woman to fly in space, orbiting the Earth 48 times over nearly 3 days aboard Vostok 6. It was a stunning achievement, not just technologically, but symbolically. Here was a woman proving to the entire world that space was not just a man's domain, but Valentina's journey was not easy. Training under pressure. Valentina endured grueling physical tests, centrifuge spins, isolation chambers, zero-gravity flights, all designed to push her to the limit. She also faced political pressure. After all, her mission was as much a propaganda tool for the Soviet Union as it was a scientific endeavor. Behind the triumph was a young woman navigating extreme stress, public scrutiny, and the knowledge that many believed she shouldn't be there at all. After her flight, she became an international celebrity, but her career as a cosmonaut was effectively over. She never flew in space again. It would take nearly 20 years for another woman, Svetlana Savitskaya, to follow in her footsteps. In the United States, the situation was even more complicated. Barriers in the West. During the early days of NASA, women were not even considered for astronaut selection. Despite having women pilots with impressive flight records, like the legendary Jerry Cobb and her fellow members of the Mercury 13, NASA refused to allow them to join the space program. The argument? That the astronaut corps required military test pilot experience, a career path women were barred from pursuing. So, while men were launching into orbit, these women could only watch from the sidelines, their talents and training unrecognized. It wasn't until 1983 that the United States finally sent its first woman into space, Sally Ride. By then, the Soviet Union had already launched 2 women. Sally's achievement was historic, but it also highlighted just how deeply entrenched gender barriers had been, even in a nation that prided itself on freedom and equality. More than just a ride. These early pioneers didn't just open the door for women in space, they kicked it down. Today, women like Christina Koch, Jessica Meir, and Peggy Whitson are redefining what's possible. In 2019, Koch and Meir conducted the first all-female spacewalk, a moment that would have been unimaginable in Valentina's or Sally's time. And Whitson? She holds the record for the most cumulative time spent in space by an American astronaut, male or female. Yet, even with these achievements, women in space and STEM fields continue to face challenges. Underrepresentation, unequal funding, and persistent stereotypes that question their competence. But the tide is turning. Why these stories matter? You might be wondering, why does this history still matter? Haven't we moved past all that? The truth is, progress is not guaranteed. History shows us that social change often comes slowly, and that rights once gained can be taken away. By remembering the women who fought for their place in science and space exploration, we acknowledge the barriers they overcame and the sacrifices they made. Their stories remind us that talent knows no gender, and that dreams are universal. The more we tell these stories, the more we inspire the next generation of scientists, engineers, and explorers, regardless of who they are or where they come from. Closing reflection: daring to dream. So next time you look up at the night sky, think of Valentina Tereshkova, floating high above the Earth in a tiny capsule, daring to do what many said she couldn't. Think of Sally Ride, stepping aboard the Challenger, knowing she was carrying the hopes of millions. And think of all the young girls today, staring at the stars, wondering what's out there, and knowing that it could be them who go next, because the cosmos belongs to all of us. And history has shown that the only real barrier is believing you don't belong. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a like. It really helps out. Feel free to drop a comment and share your thoughts. And hey, if you want more fascinating stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to History Drops. We've got plenty more coming your way. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.